listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. Tons to talk about. The Titans and the Jaguars play on Thursday Night Football. The Titans kick the Jaguars like a bad habit, but there's a lot going on in that victory. So we'll get into that. Obviously, game of the week. This is a football Friday, by the way. I don't know if you realize. Though there will be a suspicious amount of baseball in today's football Friday because the World Series returns to Wrigley Field for the first time since 1945. So we've got a lot to get there as well. Georgia, Florida-Georgia line, game of the week. And the Gators and the Bulldogs have a lot on the line here. Georgia's playing to save the season, right? Like Georgia is playing to not have a failure of the season. You went from a guy who coached you and had 10 wins a year, basically guaranteed for you. 9 to 10 wins, Mark Richt. And you wanted to upgrade. And the guy that you replaced him with, so far, because I'm not one of these guys that kicks, a person while they're only one season into their coaching career, so far has been a failure relative to what you had. And there is a figure of speech invented for exactly this moment, which is the bird in hand is worth two in the bush. Mark Richt is worth anything else you could have gone out to go get because there's no guarantee that the next guy comes in and just does this brilliant job. But I've said I think Kirby Smart's going to be fine for Georgia all along. But there's growing pains to learning to be a head coach. You're Georgia. You don't want to hear this right now. You don't want to hear about the growing pains, and the growing pains are not fun when they happen to you on your team, especially when your team was a winning football team and they are currently not. So Georgia's hungry. They have a lot to fight for. Florida, they're on the inside track to win the SEC East. They win out. They win the East. However, the rest of the schedule for them is not easy. It starts with this game. And Tennessee's lurking in the distance with, by the way, not necessarily a walk in the park, but an easiest schedule. Now, they've got to keep their heads up here and pay attention to South Carolina. South Carolina is a trap game. Don't want to throw that word around wildly, but this is a trap game, if ever I saw one. It's got all the makings of a trap game. This school is not good at football this year. They've got a new coach. They've got a lot of things that they need to work out. They're pretty abysmal. You've come off of a bye week, 2 losses in a row to really good schools. What you want from Tennessee is to just come out and punch South Carolina in the mouth. What could end up happening is much, 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 much worse. So we'll talk about that as well. But I want to tell you about where you can find us online, and thusly where we can find you. I recommend all of our social media, Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Our website is noogaradio.com. You go straight there. You can get to all the social media. You can stream us live with video on YouTube, this show, as well as the David Tulis Show, America's Morning News, and Binary with Russell Stroud, all of our local programming. And we're looking to get you so much more. And nobody gives you more football every weekend than we do. And you can stream all of that on noogaradio.com or the Facebook page, which has a radio plug-in little application there on the page. And nobody else is doing that. I'm just telling you. We're ahead of the curve. And also, the TuneIn Radio app, free in whatever app store you need to get this done. The TuneIn Radio app. Search Hot News Talk Radio in the app. Give us a favorite. Press play. That's Hot News Talk Radio in the TuneIn Radio app. Listen like you mean it. So, I have to talk about Thursday Night Football, which is a game that I was not interested in watching in any way at all. And then I realized the Titans were playing in the game because I don't pay attention to what the Thursday night game is until like Thursday morning. Just because I don't feel like the games are of very high quality. And I've said this before, and I've said this a million times. I don't sit around and watch bad stuff. If something to me is not good, I'm not going to waste my time watching it. All right, I don't watch a show on TV if I think it's bad. If I turn on the TV, if I'm watching some shows and it's, let's say, you've got 3 or 4 episodes where it just gets awful, I'm out. I'm sorry, I don't have half an hour to an hour to dedicate to bad TV. It's been a while since I've gone to see a movie that I thought was so terrible I had to walk out. But I'll walk out of a bad movie. I don't have time to watch bad stuff. All right. There just isn't enough. Life is already too short. I'm not watching terrible stuff. I don't think you should either if you don't like it. Now, that's your own personal taste. What I think is a bad show, if you like it, I mean, go ahead and watch it. But if you think something is horrible, don't sit down and watch it just because, well, I've been watching it for 4 seasons, so I'm just going to stick around and see if it gets better. If it turns on you, leave. You don't owe them anything. And if it gets good while you're gone, I don't know, have Netflix or something. Go back and check it out. I don't know. But don't sit there and just watch bad TV on purpose. And I won't sit down and watch bad football either. And Thursday night football, because of what it demands of the players, is bad football. I mean, if the Jaguars aren't the poster boy for what makes really bad football. I mean, the Titans played well, but that game was a bad game. And it was a bad game in large part because the Jaguars already have trouble stopping the run. They can't stop the run at all. It's been a problem for them this season. It continues to be a problem. They're decent at stopping the pass. They're decent at stopping tight ends against the pass. But they're just not great at stopping the run. And oh, look, here comes the Tennessee Titans, a team basically engineered to destroy Jacksonville. That's exactly what they did. You've got Derrick Henry. You've got DeMarco Murray. You've got a very, very talented, long, fast offensive line in a stretch running scheme. Guess what happened? Derrick Henry and DeMarco Murray ran buck wild all over the Jacksonville defense. I mean, just anywhere they wanted to go. Derrick Henry finally punches it in, scores his first NFL touchdown. Marcus Mariota off of the play action was a monster, throwing daggers all over the yard. This guy is really good. And I know that I get on Mike Mularkey a lot because I think that he's ruining Marcus Mariota. But there is some merit to what it is that Mike Mularkey is doing, which is if you slow the offense down a ton, then you're not demanding so much from your quarterback. And if you are running a lot, and they are running at a pace that makes them look like a 90s NFL offense, okay? They are one of the slower teams in the league if you talk about plays per game. They don't get in as many plays per game. They're a very slow-paced team. They're about time of possession, owning the clock, winning the running game. These are the things that used to win you football games that don't win you football games anymore. Look at Atlanta. Look at the Patriots. Look at Cincinnati. These teams don't run the ball like that, and they are very successful at not running the ball like that. And here comes Tennessee just looking like a throwback. Well, the throwback plus Mariota, who with his legs on that play action, when he comes out of that boot, he is so far away from any defender. Nobody is capable of touching him at all. He is in a world, in a class by himself. Just God. The guy is fast. And if a play breaks down, if he can't find anybody, he takes off. He picks up the first down. And here's the thing that I like about Marcus Mariota that I never understood about RG3. Dude, you are a quarterback. Do not put your shoulder down and try and blast your way through a linebacker. You can't do it. You weren't built to do it. You're not Cam, and even Cam doesn't do it. And Marcus Mariota gets out of bounds, or he slides. Perfect. And Tennessee's offense was rolling and pounded Jacksonville like a drum. And I look at that team and I go, man, this is a team that's about to try and give up on Blake Bortles, though. I wouldn't give up on Bortles. I'm just saying, when I look at that offense, I'm like, it's not a completely incompetent offense. But defensively, they can't stop anything at all. If you run it against them, you just can't. They cannot stop you. And when you add the fact that some teams have a thunder and lightning tandem at running back, right? Look at the Vols, Jalen Hurd, Alvin Kamara. Look at the Titans. It's not thunder and lightning. It's thunder and thunder. DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry are big guys. Like Derrick Henry had a play when I think the Titans were on the 15-yard line about the third quarter, and they were about to score another touchdown. And Derrick Henry runs, and he's about to be stopped just short of the first down marker and lowers his shoulder into a defender and blasts him back in a play that looks horrifyingly reminiscent of what it was that Leonard Fournette did to that poor kid from Ole Miss, who we still can't find. Erase that poor guy from history. I mean, it looked the same. He just lowered his shoulder, and that guy disappeared. Any evidence of his existence vanished. We couldn't find his birth records. His friends couldn't remember him from elementary school. Like, he just got knocked out of existence. It was an incredible play. And everything that Tennessee was hoping that Derrick Henry would be when they drafted him, he's starting to come into his own. And there's no better way to get yourself going a little bit than playing against Jacksonville's sorry defense. And it is very sorry. Also, I saw some very promising things from Derrick Henry in pass protection. Picking up extra defenders coming in trying to get to Mariota, and he stood up and gave Mariota some extra time to climb the pocket, which is also another thing. Marcus Mariota keeping his eyes downfield, going through his progressions. He's not taking off too early, like a lot of people were afraid that he would be one of those kinds of quarterbacks, because when you're fast, that's exactly an option that you have that other guys don't have. Like Tom Brady keeps his eyes down the field because Tom Brady can't run anywhere. And Tom Brady is slower than molasses going uphill. Like, Tom Brady runs any slower, he might just be going backwards. That's not an option that dude has. In Marcus Mariota, you've got that option, so obviously that's something that you're going to use if you've got it, but he keeps his eyes downfield. He stays in the pocket until he absolutely has to leave. But even Aaron Rodgers doesn't do stuff like that. Aaron Rodgers takes off if things get really uncomfortable. He's really good at handling pressure, but if stuff starts to get uncomfortable, Aaron Rodgers is gone. Like, statistically, according to Pro Football Focus, Aaron Rodgers leaves the pocket a little too early. Marcus Mariota is even overcoming that. This is his second year in the league. That's very, very promising. And if you're a Titans fan, you have every reason to think the Titans are winning this division, which I thought that they would, just because I didn't think that Brock Lobster was going to be ready to go immediately, right? Like, Brock Lobster is a guy. He's Brock Osweiler, but to me, he's Brock Lobster. He'll always be Brock Lobster. Brock Lobster is a guy that when he had his opportunities against or backing up Peyton Manning in Denver, he looked great at times. There were games where he looked stellar, and there were games where he looked bad. And the consistency, to me, was always the problem with him. And it's still a problem. And I don't think Houston can win without him doing that. And also, how do you have DeAndre Hopkins and can't get that guy involved? Like, I don't understand how that works as an offense. He's wasting DeAndre Hopkins. You understand if DeAndre Hopkins played for any other football team, he's probably every bit as popular as Odell Beckham Jr. You realize DeAndre Hopkins had a cooler one-handed catch than Odell Beckham Jr. It just was a penalty on the play, so it came back. But he just plucked the ball out of the air. Like, it didn't look like there was effort involved. He actually had a cooler catch than Odell Beckham. We would know who Hopkins was if he could get a quarterback who wasn't pure dreck to throw the football. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. Football Friday, Florida, Georgia. Let's go. Important game, right? Florida's got a lot at stake. You've got the inside track of the SEC East. Everybody's telling you can win it. I was talking about South Carolina being a trap game for Tennessee. This is not a trap game for Florida as such, because Florida, I don't think, is quite on that level. I think that their offense is good enough to not let them down. Their defense is stellar. But because they lack that offensive punch and that offensive firepower, it's hard to say exactly how far they could go. I couldn't honestly tell you. And wonky stuff happens in this game. Like, I talk about how wonky stuff happens in the Iron Bowl, because, I mean, it does. But wonky stuff happens in Florida versus Georgia, and I don't understand the nature of it. It's impossible to predict this game. I will try to, at the end of the show, give you my pick as to who is going to be winning that game, so you're going to stick around for that, I hope. But I don't know how even to begin to assess this, because you've got a team in Georgia that, if they rush the football well, when they rush the football well, they are dominant. They look every bit as good as they did last year. The problem is that they haven't very often looked that good. You have Nick Chubb, but Nick Chubb has swiffled. Like, he's waffled between looking like the Nick Chubb that we used to know, Superman, and Clark Kent, and he looks weak in some games. That obviously you can't put too much pressure on that knee. And like I said at the beginning of this season, I had some worries about Nick Chubb coming back from that injury so early. He injured his knee horrifically, not even a full year ago when he came back. Those injuries are hard to come back from, and just because a doctor clears you for it doesn't necessarily mean that you should just come back. And this is not a championship scenario. Though they did need him against North Carolina. I mean, if anything indicates, like when they don't have Nick Chubb and when they don't have Nick Chubb playing well, Georgia's entire offense stalls and doesn't look very good at all. And the defense, while solid at points, you can run on that defense too, and even throw to the sides of that defense and be very effective. So they need that running game. They need to possess the football. They need to have it. They need to be able to be in control of the game, of the time, need to run that clock. And if they don't have that, I don't see how they beat Florida. But Florida can be scored on. I mean, it's weird because, like, as elite as this defense is, I was watching when you watched what Tennessee did to Florida in the second half of that game. When you start throwing punches at them, you can really start to get some combinations in. And if you're looking at Jacob Eason, who they haven't asked to do a whole lot, let's be honest. Jacob Eason has come in. They've thrown him to the wolves. They said, look, we're going to let you develop. We're going to let you develop on the field, playing football. But Jacob Eason hasn't been asked to do a whole lot. Not really. And he hasn't had to make a ton of very tough throws unless the game's been on the line. And I think this is the time that they need to start asking Jacob Eason to do a little bit more. And it's tough because it's hard to say whether or not that'll set his development back at all. But their offense cannot function with timid Jacob Eason and Nick Chubb, who can't go. So you need Nick Chubb to be the guy that played North Carolina and less the guy who played Vandy. And you need Jacob Eason to take a few more risks. We're going to throw some passes over the middle. We're going to work the sideline some more. We're not going to do a lot of bubble screens for you, because that stuff is easy stuff to get you started, to get you going. But we need you to put the ball down the field. And he's got such a great arm and such great touch throwing the ball down the field that I find it very difficult to believe that you haven't tried to do that already. If Florida can't beat you in a shootout, you realize that, right? Florida can't do it. I know that Georgia's defense is not stellar and certainly not where Kirby Smart wants that to be. But make no mistake, it's not stellar. It's not stellar, but you know, Luke Del Rio in Florida, they're not world beaters over there. They're not exactly world beaters over there. That's all I'm saying. All right. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. Got to talk about the Cubbies. Got to talk about the World Series, the Tribe versus the Cubbies, loser versus loser, and something has to give. No title for the Cubs since 1908, and this is the first time, and we got less than an hour before the game starts, less than an hour and a half before the game starts. First time the World Series has been in Wrigley Field since 1945, and the Cubs are looking. The Cubs are looking for that World Series win. Just a win of a game in a World Series. They'll take it. And they're going to need a lot because, let's put it this way, their situation is somewhat dire, right? You don't have Kyle Schwarber. Kyle Schwarber is a beast. He looks like a left tackle playing baseball, all right? Now, Kyle Schwarber is a guy that came back in time for the playoffs, and he came basically from injury straight to hitting. He came from injury straight to hitting. And you know what? Kyle Schwarber, especially in that game too, was pretty beastly. And that's because they played by the American League rules, though, that Kyle Schwarber was even able to be in that game. Kyle Schwarber was able to DH. There is no DH now that you're going back to Wrigley. And Kyle Schwarber can't play out in any part of the field, really. He hasn't really been cleared for that. Now, they might try and let him go, and you might have to for his offense, but the defense there is going to be lacking. I don't know how much Kyle Schwarber is going to be able to give you. So we're going to talk about the conundrum for the Cubs, because there's a huge problem that they have looming around the corner. If they do not win tonight, it's a big problem. Might even stop them from scoring any points in Game 4. This is Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch, Keon Rose.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
A $500 gift card. $500? What? That's right, Bunky. A $500 gift card from a store of your choice. The agents at Exit Realty Scenic City are confident they can sell your house. They can do it in 99 days or less. If your listing proves a slowpoke, they will give you a $500 gift card. No one works harder for you than agents at Exit Realty Scenic City. Licensed in Tennessee and Georgia. Exit sells quickly all types of commercial and residential properties and vacant land. Looking for a dream home, or maybe you're just a first-time home buyer? Let an agent get you started today on your house search. If you're a real estate agent looking for a change, see what Exit can do for you. Training, technology, branding, culture, and financial freedom. Again, Exit Realty Scenic City. Call 423-551-EXIT to learn more. Call 423-551-EXIT and learn more. Terms and restrictions may apply.
Cash, 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 and more cash. Rick Davis has the cash when you sell gold, silver, diamonds, rings, and jewelry. Sell Rick your precious metals today and lock in your price. Hey, Rick Davis will trade your cash for shiny, brilliant, and heavy gold. Gold cheaper now by $100 an ounce. Join the Rick Davis Silver Bonanza too. Prices so low, the Lone Ranger is bound to gallop in, Kimosabe.
Hey-ho, silver, away!
The markets are changing, so buy now. Cash, 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 and more cash for your silver and gold, gold, gold. Rick Davis, 5301 Brainerd Road. That's 5301 Brainerd Road. Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds. Oh, and cash, cash, cash. You know where it is.
Hey-ho, silver, away!
You want more business. You want to increase your bottom line. You want to spend less on advertising, imaging your business, and general expenses. You need Trade Bank. Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Trade Bank. Call now to get access to nearly 400 local businesses. Trade Bank. Call 877-2202. 877-2202. Trade Bank. You want to increase your cash flow, your competitive edge, attract new customers, and build a loyal customer base. You need Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Call right now. 877-2202. When you join Trade Bank, you'll get the benefit of free advertising in our monthly magazine, tradebank.com, emails, and mailouts. Join Trade Bank now and receive your Trade Bank debit card with trade credits to spend any way you want with our wide variety of Trade Bank partners. For almost 30 years, Trade Bank has been your voice for small business, a member of the American Bankers Association, and in good standing with you. Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Call now for a free consultation, 877-2202. That's 877-2202. Trade Bank of Chattanooga.
Expect clear skies to continue through your nighttime. Comfortable again overnight. Lows into the lower 50s with some patchy late fog. The weekend, though, looking very warm. Lots of sunshine. Still dry for the next several days. Could see a record breaker or two with highs 83 to 85. This forecast is brought to you by Hamilton Medical Center in Dalton, featuring their Neurosurgery and Spine Center, now open in Calhoun. Stop putting up with back pain. For more, 706-529-9041. And I'm Sports Gene 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
Hot News Talk 1240.
AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, with your chance to win $124 in cash and $124 in food every week with the Hot News Talk Radio 1, 2, 3 NASCAR contest.
Hot News Talk 1240.
All you have to do is guess who's going to be first, second, and third place in the upcoming NASCAR Sprint Cup race. If you guess it, you'll hear your name live Monday morning at 11:30. Then call AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio to win. Enter your guess right now at Rick Davis Gold and Diamonds, 5301 Brainerd Road, Chattanooga. Diesel Off-Road Technology Soddy Daisy for your four-wheel drive and truck needs. Stuff and upholstery with premium rubber foam. Amigos Mexican Restaurant next to Staples and Hickson. Drink specials during the race. Cell Surgeon, the Broken Screen Doc. And Shooter's Supply, 4824 Hickson Pike in Hickson.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Enter your guesses now and listen to the race live to win $124 in cash and $124 in food from Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
Hot News Talk 1240.
I love NASCAR.
Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. A man was found floating lifeless in a creek in Cleveland, and now his body has been identified as belonging to Henry Franklin Goodner, who's 73. Medical examiners say he died of natural causes. Police say no signs of bludgeoning or harm done in any other way were found on his body. He was a transient who frequented the area. A victim's body found traumatized and lifeless at the Cascades Motel in East Ridge. Police now say he was a homicide victim after a medical examination showed bludgeoning wounds on his body. Investigation is ongoing and the pugilist has not been found. The Hamilton County School Board has chosen a firm out of Charlotte, South Carolina to choose the new superintendent of schools in Hamilton County. There was some talk of keeping Kirk Kelly on as the superintendent of schools, but that was quickly dismissed, and the search firm was chosen at the cost of $35,000 to Hamilton County's wallet. Volkswagen's new SUV was unveiled on the Santa Monica Pier last night. The new midsize SUV is decidedly American-looking and will be built right here in Chattanooga. If it's going on in the Tennessee Valley, it's going on Hot 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Martin Truex Jr. is off the pace and he is headed to the pit lane. Elliott Powers around the outside. Michael McDowell pops a right front tire. Here's Martin Truex to the bottom. Blaney blocks him off too. Meanwhile, Chase Elliott went 4 wide on the back straightaway. They're side by side for the lead.
Hear it live on Chattanooga's official NASCAR radio station.
Hot News Talk 1240.
The voice of NASCAR.
World Series talk invading our Football Friday. Then I'll get to Tennessee, South Carolina, and give you my opinion on who's actually going to come out the winner in the Florida-Georgia game. Not going to lie, though. Florida-Georgia line, not my band. I mean, look at me. Go on YouTube and look at me. Not my band. I like. No, I don't. I was trying to find a way to be positive about it. No, I don't. That is not my cup of tea. And every time Sean Hannity's show has its intro by Florida Georgia Line, and it grinds me. It grinds me all the time. But regardless, what's the line on that game, by the way? Florida and Georgia. Probably should have checked that out earlier. But as I have mentioned many times, I'm not a gambling person, okay? I mean, I like to pay attention to the lines and stuff because I just think it's cool to see it move, see how people's betting affects the movement of the lines. But I'm not a person that necessarily partakes in any of that stuff myself, mostly because I like my money and I like it with me and not just giving it away to random strangers because I think I'm a sports genius of some kind. Like for me, if I was going to be a sports gambler, I would go science with it. I'm not gambling on my gut. We're going trends and statistics all the way. Like if I do that, that's my job. Just as an FYI, like it's not gambling if I do it, but I won't do it because I'm too lazy to do all that. So see, Georgia and Florida, CBS.com usually has the line here listed. There you go. It's got Georgia giving 7.5 points to Florida. So Florida, the 7.5 point favorites in this particular game. The game is in Jacksonville, Florida, and away we go with that. But returning to World Series talk, right? This is an interesting World Series to me because of a few things that have surprised me about both teams. One thing that has surprised me is Kluber, because of course I have not sat down and watched the Cleveland Indians all year. So I'm not going to sit down and pretend like I know or I knew that Kluber was going to be this good. But Kluber is becoming, or at least on pace to do, like Madison Bumgarner levels of stuff here. And what he's doing is absolutely intimidating. He is completely death to the Chicago Cubs lineup. They can't hit him. And we saw it in game one. It was unbelievable, right? Like they could not hit him. Couldn't hit him. And the other thing that's interesting about this series is on the Cubs side. Kyle Schwarber shows up and hasn't swung a bat since he injured his knee in spring, really. Hasn't swung a bat in a game. And all of a sudden, Kyle Schwarber shows up. He's a DH. And he is getting 2 RBIs, getting the offense going for the Cubbies. And it's turned into a fairly interesting series. Albeit now we've got the next 3 games in Chicago. And that's a place where Kyle Schwarber can't give you anything. And I've heard all kinds of people saying, well, he's got to play in the outfield, right? It's the World Series. I mean, you've got to give it a shot if you can. Listen, no, you don't. You've got way too much to lose if you're Kyle Schwarber to do that. And I'm not even talking about down the road, future contracts, money, all of that stuff. Not to mention the health of your knee in the future, that you might destroy yourself as an athlete going into the future. We're not even on all of that. I'm talking about this series. It makes no sense to put Kyle Schwarber out there. If my man Kyle Schwarber goes out there in the outfield and he's fielding and dude doesn't plant or cut laterally in the way that he wants to and tears up his knee, who you going to DH back in Cleveland if you need him for game 6 or 7? Seriously, what are you going to do? Because he lifted that offense when he was in the game in game 2. He was a gigantic boost. And where are you going to get that from if Kyle Schwarber destroys his knee? No, I'll wait. There's nowhere else you can go. Why would you do that? You are actually risking this World Series right now. Kyle Schwarber, at least in Cleveland, is able to give you something that he has been medically cleared to do. Kyle Schwarber in Chicago? There is nothing he could give you. It stinks that he can't be in the lineup. Like, if he's in the lineup, you're obviously a better hitting team, a more dangerous team, and Schwarber might be a guy who would be able to do something about that whole Kluber situation around the corner in game 4. Because you understand, you lose tonight, you're going to wish you had Schwarber. I mean, you really can't lose tonight. Right? Like, we know this, right? Like, you can't lose tonight because nobody could hit Kluber. And I haven't seen anything like this since Madison Bumgarner, where like he confused everybody all postseason long. Like, Madison Bumgarner's not invincible in the regular season. He shows up in the playoffs and you can't hit this guy. And now we're seeing it with Kluber. He's just here and you can't hit him. And I don't know exactly what shifted that up another level. And like I said, I have not watched a ton of Indians baseball. If it didn't happen in the postseason, I didn't watch it. I will be 100% honest with you. I'm not going to stand here and lie to you and pretend I watched games I didn't watch. If it didn't happen in the playoffs, I didn't see the Indians do it. And I didn't watch their first round game either. So I didn't know that this guy was this good. But the Cubs seem to have way too much trouble with him. And so the temptation is to have Schwarber in at some point. But here's a interesting thing about ACL injuries, which is what happened to Kyle Schwarber in spring. Okay, he got an ACL graft. And this is something to consider about him playing in the outfield, right? This is per an ESPN article by Stephanie Bell. She's got this great write-up on Kyle Schwarber and why it's too risky for him to play. And step one of the process of coming back, right? Because Kyle Schwarber is already not even supposed to be back. He's been cleared to hit. You get an ACL injury, by the way, you can stand. You can walk around. My girlfriend's sister has injured her ACL. I don't believe that she actually has done anything about it. She can still walk around. What ACL injuries stop you from doing is being able to plant and cut and move sharply in different directions, which is precisely what it takes to play in the outfield. And Kyle Schwarber is only 6 months removed from that. Step one, the ACL grafts continue to strengthen over the first year. At 6 months, the ACL has not yet achieved its maximum strength. Step 2, the ACL helps control deceleration and rotation of the knee. Movements that combine the two are demanding on the ligament and therefore the riskiest. For example, planting and cutting laterally or jumping and landing while twisting, that's outfield play in a nutshell. 3, the addition of uncontrolled variables increases the level of difficulty for the athlete, thus increasing injury risk. Like, I don't know, a ball out to left field that you don't know exactly where it's going to go or how it's going to bounce if it hits the ground. Uneven terrain from the outfield grass to the warning track, change of pace running, speeding up or slowing down while tracking the ball. The obstacles like the outfield wall or other outfielders, which is exactly how Kyle Schwarber got injured in the first place, are all examples of uncontrolled variables in a game setting. Recent research shows that re-injury rates following ACL reconstruction decrease significantly when a return to full sports occurs at a minimum of 9 months after surgery. To be clear, this is only 6 months after Kyle Schwarber got his knee reconstructed. Okay? So his odds of being safe and returning and having a healthy career increase dramatically in 3 more months. Kyle Schwarber should not be doing anything for another 3 more months. And quite frankly, he's even pushing it already as a DH. But you need his offense. And like people have said over and over and over again, this is the flipping World Series. You have to try and get your victories here, but not at the risk of one of your best offensive players. Not at the risk of one of your best offensive players. He's too good, too valuable. And not just down the line, even though down the line too, right? Like if the Cubs manage to even win this World Series, don't you want to win more than just the one? Don't you want to be back in this thing every year? Joe Madden has turned your team into the Spurs, into the Patriots, into the Crimson Tide. This is a team that could compete every single year for the foreseeable future. Okay? As long as he's the manager and Theo Epstein is the GM. And why would you put Kyle Schwarber at that risk? But not even thinking into the future, right? Because like none of that stuff is necessarily guaranteed. We remember when the Oklahoma City Thunder got to the NBA Finals, they lost to the Miami Heat, and we thought, well, the Thunder are going to be back here many more times. Then they trade James Harden, the whole team falls apart, and then they're never back there again. Like you have these notions that people are going to be competing for championships forever, and then the window just never quite opens for them. So this kind of thing happens. You're Chicago, you're thinking, you know what, let's capitalize on this now, bust your tail now. Maybe you have an opportunity to win this World Series, and who cares if you don't win another one for the next 10 years? It's already been 112. I get it. But Kyle Schwarber might be of value to you later this series. This series. Not next year, not the year after. If you get to game 6 and 7, Kyle Schwarber as a DH might be kind of useful. And if you wreck him in game 3 or 4 or 5, should you be so fortunate to get to a game 6 and you have to roll up on that dude Kluber one more time? My man's Kluber? My man's Kluber? Yeah, if you roll up on that dude one more time, you're not getting a hit, and you might need Kyle Schwarber. That's all I'm saying. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today, making me just a small part of your day. You know that I appreciate each and every one of you. Make sure to check us out on NoogaRadio.com, our website. Check us out on, of course, the radio, AM 1240. Just tune us into your car. Preset it, okay? It's one of the settings that I have preset in my radio on my AM dial. I'm a radio junkie, so I've got every single thing that I can preset is filled up. You know what I mean? So I get it, but you got to slide that in there, right? Like give us a little bit of love, or the TuneIn Radio app, free in your app store, whatever app store you use. Give us a favorite in the app. Press play. Hot News Talk Radio. You'll have Hot News Talk Radio everywhere you go. That's Hot News Talk Radio and the TuneIn Radio app. Listen like you mean it. So here's the thing. about Tennessee and South Carolina. Tennessee now finds itself on the outside looking in of the SEC East race. And I say that in quotes, right? Because Tennessee is still the best team in the East, even with the injuries. To be clear, I'm taking the injuries into account. They're still the best team in the East, even with the injuries. And it's kind of not that close. Sure. Do they have their flaws? Yes. Do they ever show up in the first half of a game? Not that I've seen this season. Are they injured? Do they have 12 injured players all over the place? Of course they do. Did the bye week help some of those guys recover? Yeah, it did a little bit. But now they're rolling up on South Carolina, a school that they very well ought to beat. But if you look at what South Carolina has done to people this season, okay, South Carolina has been surprisingly in games. And South Carolina reminds me a lot of, and SC fans, don't get mad at me. This is not an insult. I'm not throwing shade at your team. They remind me of the Cleveland Browns this season, okay? The Cleveland Browns have been a team that have been beaten up in a lot of different ways. They play a lot of games. They haven't won any, right? South Carolina's won games. This is not about comparing the records. The issue is that the Cleveland Browns compete in every single game that they're in, outside of like the last one where they just got whomped. They're in all these games. There's not a ton of games that they're not involved in, that they don't have a good chance at winning some of these games. And South Carolina's kind of been the same way. Are they undermanned? They certainly are undermanned. Are they the team that Will Muschamp wants yet? No, they're not. And so you look at this team and you go, okay, they played Vandy and they beat them 13-10, which, by the way, that whole 13-10 over Vandy, people were like, man, both of those teams are going to struggle, and they did both struggle. But lots of people have been struggling against Vandy that you wouldn't think would be struggling against Vandy, and that's because Vandy's actually very, very good at defense. They're a solid defensive unit. Okay, here's what South Carolina's schedule looks like, right? They beat Vandy 13-10. They lose to Miss State 27-14. They beat East Carolina 20-15. They lose to Kentucky 17-10. They lose to A&M 24-13. Like, these are not games where they've just been blown out. They had the doors blown off of them. They lose to Georgia 28-14. And they've just been blown out of the gym. In fact, they don't have any games that look like that on their schedule. Okay, they haven't lost anything by more than a touchdown. And they beat UMass 34-28 after their bye week, and now they play Tennessee. And this is a school that, sure, are they the best in the conference? Absolutely not. They don't look the part in a lot of ways of even your typical spoiler school because they're so in the middle. But this is a team that even when they lose, they compete. And Tennessee has a tendency to do a couple of things that look really, really bad. Thing number one, they overlook their opponents. Thing number two, they don't show up for the first half of games. And this is a horrible combination, as we saw when the season began. When they started against App State, they overlooked their opponent and they didn't show up for the first half of that game. And what do you know? They almost lost. Ohio, they overlooked their opponent and they didn't show up for the first half of that game. And what do you know? They almost lost. This is becoming a problem for the Vols that needs to be corrected because the rest of Tennessee's schedule is more or less smooth sailing. And this is actually kind of scary because here's a bunch of teams that they could just overlook. And I really want to see them show up for the first half of a game. I will settle for any game. I don't even count the Virginia Tech one because the Virginia Tech game was Virginia Tech giving the game away. All right, they put the ball on the ground 4 times. That was just them giving the game away. Virginia Tech honestly did not want to win that game. But you're looking at them after South Carolina. They've got Tennessee Tech. They've got Kentucky. They've got Missouri. They've got Vanderbilt. And what do most of these teams have in common? I would probably remove Tennessee Tech from this particular equation. What do most of these teams have in common? They're games that Tennessee could overlook against schools that could honestly beat them. Major issue. Major issue. They overlook Kentucky. Kentucky beats them. Problem. They overlook Missouri. Missouri beats them. Problem. And Tennessee has to rally to come back against Georgia. They have to rally to come back against Florida. But guess what? Missouri beat Georgia, or nearly beat Georgia. Georgia needed that last-second touchdown. Vanderbilt beat Georgia. And these are all the teams that are left on your schedule. You've got to do better than that. And I understand the injuries are an excuse, but like the injuries for Tennessee, to me, are an excuse to a point. And then at some point, it's you guys just not showing up for the first half of games. And it's the trend of the season. And we are, almost 2/3 of the way through this thing, and we still haven't seen a Tennessee first half performance that we can honestly hang our hat on, that we say that we like. Yeah, I don't expect them to do it against South Carolina either. I expect them to beat South Carolina. I expect them to beat South Carolina by a couple of touchdowns at least. But South Carolina is not just going to lay there and let you walk on them. They're not that kind of school. They haven't been this season. South Carolina has risen up and tried to fight everybody that they faced. That includes A&M. And A&M didn't whip South Carolina the way they whipped Tennessee. It includes Georgia. Tennessee needed to rally and come back against. It includes former Tennessee opponents. So this is a huge problem for Tennessee that I expect Butch Jones to try and correct in this part of the season. This is the part of the season where you try and fix all that stuff, and hopefully you get guys returning from injury as this all goes on. You're not playing the more brutal schools in the schedule, so hopefully the injuries should also decrease, and you play a good stretch of these games at home, right? Like the Tennessee Tech game, Neyland Stadium. Kentucky, Neyland Stadium. Missouri, Neyland Stadium. But you play South Carolina on the road. So Tennessee's going to need a great road performance, because if they can win that one, I don't want to say it's smooth sailing. Again, you don't overlook people, but this here is a trap game. You're 5-2. I feel like you're a little bit fortunate to have that 5-2. You feel like you're better than this school. But if you overlook them, they can beat you. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio, Clutch with Keon Rose. Let's go back to Georgia and Florida here, because I think Georgia wins this game. It's a feeling that I've got it in my gut. I think that Georgia does win the game. I think that Nick Chubb does get going. I think they get going on the ground. That bye week is really going to help all of the running backs. The guys who have taken up little nicks and dings and bruises and all of those things over the course of this season and get a little bit of a chance to heal. Nick Chubb, I feel like one of the reasons he came out like gangbusters against North Carolina, aside from the fact that North Carolina really isn't a great run defensive team, is that he had that rest, that he hadn't picked up any injuries, any wear and tear. And then as the season went on and as the grind went on, Nick Chubb kind of reverted to a guy who had an ACL injury. It's just what that is, right? Just because he's been cleared to play doesn't necessarily mean that Nick Chubb has been in a situation where he can really play like the guy that we knew he was. And so it's been a little disappointing to see that. Talked about it yesterday, the year of the running back looking kind of like a farce right now. Also for Tennessee, just a quick jump back to that. No Alvin Kamara for this game against South Carolina. So it's going to be key for them to get Jalen Hurd going, get him the rock early, and try and get him into this game, because he hasn't had a great season at all, and they need him now. And it's not optional anymore. They need that guy to be the bruiser that he was his freshman season. But regardless, I think Georgia wins this game over Florida. I think they do get the running game going, and if they get the running game going, then Jacob Eason is able to do Jacob Eason things, kind of pick you apart from the pocket with those beautiful rainbows that he throws downfield when he gets the opportunity. He just hasn't had as many, I think, as he would like and as Kirby Smart would like. Those opportunities to take those shots downfield, that's, I think, where Georgia is going to beat you, especially when you've got a guy like Isaiah McKenzie, who's very quick. He's very fast, has an opportunity to scorch DBs. Going to be key against breaking Florida and breaking up this defense and giving yourself a chance to win the game. And, of course, the night game 3 of the World Series. I picked the Cubbies to win tonight because they have to. I don't see how they get away from Kluber if that's the way that ends up working out. They have to. You're listening to Hot 1240, Hot News Talk Radio. Clutch and Keon Rose, thank you for joining me. Remember, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. I'll see you in 72 hours, but don't you go anywhere. Alex Jones is next.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not.